He kidnapped and murdered a girl on Blood MTNGA, an older couple in the Pisgah NC, and a girl in the Apalachicola at that campsite not long after we left. AskReddit. Campers or rangers of Reddit, what's the most unsettling, creepy, and or supernatural thing that's happened to you while in the woods? My family used to camp in Algonquin Park in Ontario when I was a kid. We used to do a lot of the day hikes with our dog. The dog was a crazy runner and would run up and down the trail, back and forth between my parents and my brother and me. This one trail ended at a lookout. My brother and I stopped to take in the view, and my dog arrived seconds later, traveling at full speed. He attempted to apply the brakes, but the momentum carried him right over the edge. We freaked out. Our dog had just gone over a cliff, and it was a good 50 or 60 foot drop. I ventured over to the edge to look. My dog had somehow landed on the one ledge that sat about 10 feet down. Shit. Now what? Any movement, and my dog would fall the rest of the way down. It was a sheer face, and no way to get down. Out of the blue, from the trail behind, appears a hiker with full climbing gear. Algonquin is not an area known for a lot of climbing. I've never seen anyone before or since with gear on that trail. This guy belayed down, rescued my dog, packed up and left. He didn't even stick around long enough to get his name. To all intents and purposes, he just returned to the trail and vanished. Went hiking with a good buddy of mine in the Carolina mountains in the middle of winter. We went way off trail, doing a full day's walk from where we'd parked. So by the time we set up camp we were miles away from the nearest human. We pitch our tent and cook ourselves some food and we're passing the whiskey flask back and forth enjoying the near pitch black night and the stillness and our little fire. At first we felt it, that sudden sensation of being not alone. Then after a few seconds we heard something move in the darkness. We're frozen. We hear it again, but the most terrifying thing is that this time, we realize whatever is out there, there's more than one of them, and they're big. My buddy and I lock eyes, too afraid to make any noise yet, and come to a silent agreement that scaring these things off is our best chance. He grabs a thick branch from the fire, and I grab one of the rocks we'd placed in a circle around it. I'm so scared I can barely breathe, but together we yell as loudly as we possibly can and charge into the darkness. And then we saw the eyes, a dozen pairs at least, staring right back at us. We had charged a ferocious pack of mountain ponies, who didn't react at all to the two crazy men yelling at the top of their lungs in the middle of the night, just stared back at us, totally unimpressed. Motherfucking ponies. I went camping with a summer program when I was 16. 12 other guys being managed by 4 adult men and we were having a great time. S'mores, hot cocoa, campfire stories, the works. We all had to be in our tents and either sleeping or awake but quiet by 11. I was in a tent with 2 other guys staying up later just talking. Typical teenage guy stuff. As one guy is talking I start to hear heavy breathing nearby, like someone has just been running and is out of breath. I ignore it and keep listening. I figure I'm just a weird kid hearing things, or that it's one of the guys in the next tent making the noise while he's sleeping. Then we hear "Please, help me" from outside. It didn't sound like anyone in the group. It sounded like an old man out of breath. We all went dead quiet and listened to this guy breath, then ask again with a whimper at the end. I don't know what possessed this guy near the front of this tent, but he turned on a flashlight and opened the inner flap but kept the outer zipped and looked out. We see just a pair of bare old, scabbed, and pale legs standing there. It looked like this guy had been walking nude through the woods for some time. He asked for help but kept standing there. We were all paralyzed with fear, but the guy at the front managed to say keep walking down the trail. A ranger should be around soon. The guy stopped breathing and said no rangers. They keep me here. It was at this point someone else finally spoke up. A chaperone came out of his tent with a flashlight and cautiously asked him, "How long have you been out here? What happened to you?" The old man didn't answer. He just started sobbing and ran off into the woods. We saw by the flashlight that he was completely naked and emaciated. When I was about 18, me and some friends took a road trip about 7 hours or so down to the Apalachicola National Forest near Tallahassee, FL. We were going to do a little car camping, drink a few ice cold natty lights, you know, 18-year-old stuff. As such, we didn't want to be bothered by any park rangers, so we drove wide deep into the woods. Got there, set up camp, had said natty lights, and me and a guide decided to go do a little exploring. So we walked about 100 yards from our site back to the main road, saw another path directly across from us, and started walking. Immediately we started seeing signs that someone had lived there for a while. Big bags of trash, stuff like that. Should have been a huge red flag to turn around. But you know, 18. Nothing could hurt us. So we get to this campsite of an older white guy living out of his van. Clotheslines strung up, coolers places around it, and a big gorgeous dog. I think maybe a golden retriever. We tried to back out, but he sees us and starts talking. He's friendly enough, asks us where we're from, tells us about some cool spots to check out in the park. We end up chatting for 10 minutes and going on our way. I kept thinking to myself how odd it was that he gave directions in steps, not yards or miles. Guy always seemed to be off balance, not stumbling drunk, but like he was walking on a balance beam, swaying side to side. Oh, and he was super excited to talk about national parks and forests where we were from. Okay, camping part over. We went back to our tents. Fast forward 2 months. Same buddy calls me late at night and tells me to turn on TV to the news. I oblige. I see an old dude with a van. You see where this is headed, but I didn't. So I get pissed at my friend for waking me up. No, watch. And then I see the golden retriever and it all clicks. What the frick? That man's name was Gary Michael Hilton. Convicted of at least 4 murders. He kidnapped and murdered a girl on Blood MTNGA, an older couple in the Pisgah NC, and a girl in the Apalachicola at that campsite not long after we left. Yes, the very same places he had been talking to us about. Obviously we call the cops. They put us in touch with the FBI. F is for Florida. And we get flown down to take investigators to the campsite, point out every spot we saw anything, tell them exactly what he told us, and show them the places he described to us. I didn't find out until after the trial, but apparently they found what appeared to be partially destroyed human finger bones in an area near the site. Had to fly down again to testify. My family and I were camping on a lake in central Texas on a week with very few people around. Our spot was on the edge of the camp next to the woods and very close to the edge of the lake. We were playing Pictionary by the campfire the first night we were there when I see a light go by over the lake. I didn't think much of it and was still focusing on the game when another one went by at the same speed following the same line. At that point I felt a little bit strange, but still wasn't too worried about it. After that another went by and now I pointed out and my dad said he noticed it as well. We walk out past the campfire and campground lights to get a better view of what these were. They continued to fly by over the lake going the same speed and staying the exact same distance from each other. They were reddish yellow orbs and there was no sound coming from them. Now my whole family is watching in awe and disbelief. After about 15 go by, the last one was chased by a white ball of light that was much closer than the rest. We didn't talk about it much after discussing what it could be. But when we got back home from the trip my mom looked it up and saw that people in a town a few miles from our campsite reported seeing the same thing exactly the way we saw it. Not my story, but my dad's. My father used to have a business in maintaining the woods. Couldn't find an English term. It is a thing in my country. It basically means cutting down dead trees and hauling them out of the area. This meant that he was out in the woods all day and he was allowed in places normal citizens couldn't come because of rules by the Forestry Commission. My dad was working in the early morning when he suddenly noticed a car in the middle of the woods. It drove through a small path normally only used by the forester. It wasn't a car from the commission, so he thought it was very weird that it was there. However, Dad was alone and it was the 80s. No mobile phones to contact anyone. Since it was in the middle of nowhere, he decided to ignore it. He kept on hauling wood through the woods with his horse when he suddenly heard men speaking. Now, My dad is a brave man and strong as a bear, so he decided to just take a quick peek to see what the hell those folks were doing. My dad looked around some thick brushes making sure he could see the men. They were digging a hole. My father decided that this was something that he really wouldn't want to interrupt, and he kept working throughout the day like nothing ever happened. He made sure to keep some distance between him and the digging site. The men apparently never noticed my dad, possibly because his equipment wasn't located in the direction the men came from, and my father worked with horses, so there weren't any loud machines. It was the 80s after all. At the end of the day, my father got to the local commission office and reported it. They called the police. There was a body of a young woman buried there. It still irks my dad to this day. He was out alone there. What if the man saw him? What if he decided to check the burial ground out himself? Scary shit. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed these creepy camping stories, make sure to drop a fat like and subscribe for more sweet vids. Check out some of these other videos below. I'll see you next time.